Hi, it's Natalia with Enchanted Herbals, and this is my respiratory support class. So I felt that it would be obviously really important to put out right now because of the coronavirus itself and the symptomatics that are seeming to come out of the coronavirus. So full disclosure right here, right now though, I am not suggesting that you do not go see your doctor if you need to, or if you have a cough with that high fever, dry cough, shortness of breath, go to the hospital, do the protocols that are out there for you right now. These are just some tips that I'm putting out there for you to keep yourself well, the respiratory system, the upper respiratory system, and I'll talk a little bit about the lower respiratory system too. In the meantime, and things that you can do to kind of help break it up if you had to at home, like you've already been checked out, you go home and you still have all these symptomatics that you're trying to work through. So the respiratory system is, the upper respiratory system is your nose, into your nose, your sinus cavities, your throat, and your upper part of your lungs. So when you breathe up here, and you can really feel the difference, like when you have a cough from up here, you feel it from up here. Your lower respiratory is the lower part of your lungs. Like your lungs have 4 chambers, and you have the upper and then the lower. And that lower part is where we're finding that this particular virus is sitting and affecting. So this class is for the whole respiratory system, primarily the upper respiratory system, but some things will touch down into that lower respiratory, and I'll kind of explain as I go. I feel like I'm a newscaster in the news today. I'm just kidding. Anyways, so the first things I want to talk about are certain things that you can do that help thin out mucus for your respiratory system, your sinus system. So foods. So again, if you look back at any of my other videos when I'm talking about any of this, I always state food is your medicine, and food is your #1 pick for any kind of wellness plan. And then when you do get sick, it helps to get you better even faster. So food is your strengthening. Food is the foundation of your health, period. So look how you're eating and make sure that that is really good. I stated in a couple other videos before this, so I have a free kitchen medicine class on my YouTube channel before this, and then I have a couple videos of what I think, or I have something to say about the coronavirus, and I'll keep kind of putting those out. Those videos are, they're tips about things that you can do, but they're mostly awarenesses of the situation as a whole, like how we can really learn and grow from them. So I suggest you check them out. I'm pretty proud of them. So this class, also like the the kitchen medicine class, is normally a paid for class that I do. So I'll mention again at the end, if you feel like donating any money for this, I'll have my PayPal link in the description. You can feel free to donate whatever you want. You don't need to by any means. I'm obviously just putting this stuff out to create some empowerment and know that you have a lot more control over things that are going on in and around your body than you think that you do. Okay. So food, again, food is medicine. So that's the first thing. So there are certain foods that thin phlegm and support the mucus, the mucous membranes in the body. So our nose and our sinus cavities, our throat, the tube of our neck, actually our whole tube of our digestion, our mouth, the digestive system, all the way down to the outer end is one contained system. So the mucosa lining is important in there. And the mucosa lining is important through the nasal cavities, the sinuses, and down the throat and into the lungs. So this is what's important. We need to keep that mucosa tissue as healthy, as intact, and as vibrant as we can. And it helps us to, one, expel viruses, expel things easier, and just keeps us healthy overall. So we really want, it's vital to our overall immunity. And so there's some foods that help that, as well as supporting the healthy inflammation process in the body. So when we catch a virus, our body creates inflammation. So just like a very simple and easy way to see this is if you sprain your ankle. It's not a virus, but I'm just showing you an inflammation example. But if you sprain your ankle and your ankle inflames, so this is a healthy part of us healing. So that inflammation brings blood flow to the area to create healthy new tissue growth, to make sure that there's no bacteria or any infection that's going to happen. So it brings in that healthy blood flow. It also cushions the area so that we can keep safe. So you ideally want to kind of let that happen, but there becomes a point when it becomes problemsome. So like a fever is another thing. Fever is a really great thing to kind of let them run the course and let them happen. Of course, they're saying with this coronavirus that you can get up to 104, like this huge spike of fever of 104. And that's a high fever. That's really uncomfortable. That's even borderline, or is where you're starting to kind of see things and really not feeling good. So especially for an adult. Children can withstand a little bit more than an adult can. So we're going to want to support that fever, not just take it away because it's part of our healing process, but we're going to want to help it to that heat to disperse, open up cells in our body and sweat it out. So that's a big part of building natural immunity. So using our mucosa tissue, using our sinus cavities, our throat, our lung tissue to really build natural immunity, and then letting our fever work its magic as it can. So the foods in particular that are going to help with phlegm and in the inflammation response, because at some point, right, this particular flu, as far as I've done research on, at some point really can possibly release a really heavy inflammation, a pro-inflammatory response of the T helper cells and creating that the cytokine storm. So basically it's just that your body releases a lot of this, a group of T killer cells or helper cells into the tissue, and then that tissue inflames up. It's just your body really trying to like do what it needs to do, but that cascading response and this particular virus that likes the lungs, especially the lower respiratory system, is causing a lot of problem in that tissue. So we're just wanting to focus on a really good, healthy inflammatory response. So if I explain that wrong by any means, if somebody's out there, again, I said this on the last video, I'm not really an immunologist, if that's even how you say that, but I do find great interest in figuring out how things work. So if anybody has a better explanation than that, then feel free. But that's pretty much a whole, very uncomplicated kind of version of it. So we want to create a really healthy inflammatory response. So things like turmeric, black cumin seed, boswellia, and then things that help mediate or modulate our immune system. So I just realized I was probably yelling. I get excited. So I'm going to tone it down. Hopefully I wasn't too loud in your ear. To modulate your immune system. So that means balance it out, right? So part of that cytokine storm is a really big push to the immune system. The immune system just goes really active. There's a word I'm looking for that it'll come to me later. So we want to create that balance, right? It gets really aggressive. Your immune system gets really aggressive. So those things, like I said, so turmeric, and then also there's some herbs that are great immune modulators, astragalus, cat's claw, some of the mushrooms, reishi mushrooms, and I'm going to just add another little disclaimer. If you already have autoimmune disease and you've ever tried any of those and they're irritating to you, then those aren't going to be your friends in this situation either. So just be mindful of that, or reach out to your herbalist or your naturopathic doctor, anybody that might have seen you a little bit deeper to find those answers. The same is with echinacea and possibly elderberry. So just to be mindful, if you've ever kind of felt worse on those, then right now isn't the time to retest those out. So those are things that really kind of help to kind of modulate. It's just a few of them. I'm going to talk about herbs, but not a lot about herbs, because I really want you to know that you have some empowerment in your kitchen of really basic things in order to help with this respiratory and cough and getting things moving. So to help with the mucus and the phlegm, things like onions, garlic, these are really high in quercetin, especially the onion peels too. So like if you're making soup, there I am again yelling. I'll quiet it down. So if you're making soup, throw the onion peels in with it. You can pull them out later. They're really high in quercetin. Like when I make bone broths, I always throw the skin in and everything, garlic too. Spices, like jalapenos and cayenne, all those ones, you know, when you eat them and then you're like, your mucus gets thin and you just start running, right? Horseradish, ginger, cooked pears are really warming and moistening to the lungs in traditional Chinese medicine. So having some pears on hand and cooking, like that's super easy to do, right? Warm lemon water. So in the least, even with people who were kind of struggling with super thick phlegm or whooping cough, where there's like inflammation that's kind of happening in the throat and the phlegm is really thick, it can't like move. Even just a warm water, like if you have nothing else, then just doing warm water, warm lemon water would be even better. Maybe even warm lemon honey water would be even better. Maybe if you have sage or thyme, that adding that in would be even another more compounded process. It's something that would be even better. And then a couple of, I mentioned this in the kitchen medicine class. So fire cider has most of all of those in there, or you can put all of those in there, plus other things like lemon peel, orange peel. Like orange is really good for breaking up mucus. So if you're buying a lot of oranges right now, particularly if they're organic, before you toss them out, take that outer peel off and dry them out and use those for a tea. Really great for breaking up phlegm. And the onion garlic syrup. Again, Rosemary Gladstar has some great videos, learningherbs.com or Learning Herbs on YouTube shows you how to make those. Fire cider, you can find so many videos on that one now. So that's just partially some of the foods. Again, I'm going to mention again, just because I have to, your berries and your greens are incredible anti-inflammatories. We're trying to get as much antioxidants into your body to protect all your healthy cells as you can. So allowing yourself to incorporate as many high antioxidant foods as you can. Green tea is another one, or matcha tea is another really great one to drink. Even white tea if it bothers you, or rubos, I always say that wrong. Also very high antioxidant. So just kind of getting that into your daily diet every day, right? We're just supporting our body to really do the best that it can. So there's that food part. Remember, I wanted to mention ginger again too. Paul Bruner has two books, antibacterial and antiviral book, that I refer to all the time. But he talks about doing, especially when you start to get sick and you're cold and you're kind of look depleted, pale, drinking ginger, which is a more kind of stimulating diaphoretic, helps to kind of move through that. Like, so it helps you fight better with that virus. So I know I'm not explaining some of these things really well. And trust me, you can find information on it, so you can do more information, or do more searching on it. But ginger in itself has, we've found that it does really great in that beginning process when you're getting sick and you feel really cold as an antiviral, and boosting the immune system. So ginger is wonderful for so many things. So I always recommend that you have ginger in your kitchen. You can buy the ginger rhizomes and put them in the freezer. You can slice them up and dry them. They're easy to have on hand all the time. They're really great for inflammation, help mediating inflammation. So again, we're back to keeping that process of inflammation as healthy and balanced as we can. Boosting immunity, it's really good for nausea. I'm sure that you've heard nausea, digestion, circulatory system. It's really great. So one of the other things, right, the more susceptible, or the crowd, you know, or people with this virus that are more susceptible to it being a little bit more dangerous, or people with existing lung disease and lung issues, diabetes and kidney issues are two big ones. And then obviously the elders, just because their immunity tends to be a little bit lower. If you already have existing autoimmune disease as well, it's just something to be mindful about and be a little bit more cautious of. So maybe getting those things in there that really are starting to support those tissues and support your immune system is only going to help, right? It's not going to hurt the situation when we're really eating well, boosting our immune system, doing the things that are good for our body to help it. So that astragalus that I mentioned is really great for lungs, for the spleen, for balancing out the immune system, for keeping you well. The thing is with astragalus that I know is that once you get really hot and heated from a fever, you want to back off the astragalus, because astragalus can also be heating. So that's information that I have read. There are herbalists that have said something different. So again, you can kind of look into that research and see what suits you best with that. So echinacea shines really good at the beginning too, right? So right at that beginning in large doses. The same with ginger. I said that in the kitchen medicine class. So like juicing ginger and taking like ounces of it, or making a really super strong decoction with like at least a tablespoon, 2 tablespoons of chopped up ginger to a cup of water. Make it really strong, and then you drink ounce, like a little shot glass full. Frequently. The same with echinacea. It's large doses, teaspoon doses, frequently, every couple hours at the beginning for a first couple of days to help minimize the tracking of the virus. So the thing is with echinacea really works great if you're hot and you're red and you like see all that heat kind of building in the body. Echinacea is more cooling, and so it shines there. Now, there's nothing wrong with blending both echinacea and ginger if you can't kind of tell the difference between those hot and colds as well. Okay, so that's what I'm going to say about food, and then I'm going to make a hot toddy with you. So this is super simple. So I made this tea. This is my tea blend. I have the absolute honor and joy of having a nice apothecary in my kitchen or in my house, because I'm also a clinical herbalist. So I have wonderful access to these beautiful plant medicines. So this one I just formulated basically for this class, but it's a great tea to have on hand. And I'll tell you what's in it. And you can add some of these herbs or all of the herbs if you have them. So in here I put equal parts of chamomile, yarrow, and spearmint, and red clover. And then less of boneset, feverfew, and marshmallow. Now those are, boneset and feverfew are bitter. So you can do a half part, so like full parts of chamomile, yarrow, spearmint, and red clover. And a part can be a tablespoon, a part can be a cup, or a cup, like whatever you choose for the part. So say you do equal parts of those and half a part of boneset, feverfew, or even a quarter part, because those get really bitter. But boneset is fantastic for fevers, for viruses, really potent antiviral, and getting the fever to move and dispel from the body. It's super bitter, like I said, so you want to be able to tolerate this and take this, so you can kind of play around with the dosing. And then marshmallow is nice and moistening to this mucosal tissue. You can even put slippery elm in there if you want. Red clover is also moistening, and it's helpful for the lungs and keeping the lungs moving. Yarrow is another diaphoretic. I put that in there too because it's a really powerful antiviral also, gets things moving. Spearmint is for to cool you down. You could do peppermint instead. I just prefer spearmint myself. Chamomile is basically, I put it in here as an anti-inflammatory and to help with the discomfort of having a fever and not feeling good. Bone set will kind of help with that too, but you can also add lemon balm, which is a great antiviral, linden, skullcap, any other kind of nervine things that kind of help relax you a little bit and make you feel better temporarily until you can get better fully. So that's this little tea blend. Super easy, wonderful tea. So what I did was I brewed that wonderful tea into an infusion or a medicinal tea, not necessarily an infusion. Infusion is a stronger brewed tea, lots of herb brewed overnight. So this is still warm. I did a tablespoon per cup, probably a little bit more in this jar. And this I did to show you because seriously, this is how I brew my teas. I brew my teas in a quart jar with a lid. You don't need anything special. You can use a press if you have one, but you don't need that. Nothing special at all. So basically, a jar I save, very crazy like, I save almost all my jars. There's just a few that you just don't get clean very well, or if the top doesn't have a nice lip for me that I like, that I don't sell, that I save, I recycle. But for the most part, I wash and reuse. This was probably like an avocado mayonnaise jar or something like that. So reduce, reuse, recycle. That's the best way. Recycle is the last because that has its own problems, right? Okay, so I'm going to pour this in here. Almost full, not quite full. So again, this is just a little handheld strainer. I have a few of these. Super easy. Not a big deal. Nothing spectacular here. Super cheap to buy. I throw that back in here because I always do my teas like that, and then I always do another half brew. So when I wind up using all this and pressing it out, I do another half brew, and obviously it's not nearly as medicinal. I just feel like I'm getting more out of the plant, and you usually do. You'll see that still more constituents, the color is still there. And then compost your plant material, please, or just release it out into your backyard if you don't have a compost pile, or put it in your, mix it in the soil of your house plants. Reuse. Okay, so then now I got my shot glass, my Air Force shot glass. My boys in the Air Force, go Air Force. And brandy. I use brandy. Classically, it's used with whiskey. I particularly do not care for whiskey. So, and brandy, I have an asthmatic in my house. So brandy is a wonderful bronchial dilator. It helps for you to breathe deep and catch that breath. So I use brandy. And depending on who you are, I don't drink a lot. So the point of a hot toddy is to get herbs into your body, relax the body, and let you sleep. So this is in place of any of those nighttime sniffly drinks that you might get somewhere, right? And so if you're somebody who doesn't drink a lot, then maybe you do a half. If you're somebody that maybe every once in a while lets their kids or doesn't mind their kids having a little alcohol, I mean, I'm not judging and I'm not telling you to do it either. Maybe you do half, right? Maybe if it's a smaller kid and you're thinking about it, you're contemplating, again, I'm not telling you what to do. Maybe you do a little less, okay? So I'm going to do a full shot because I'm going to give this to my husband. I don't really drink, so. But I would. This is my go-to. If I didn't feel good, this is the medicines I'm doing. I'm drinking lots of teas, lots of infusions, lots of nourishment, lots of moisture. Just stay moist, whatever you can to get in. So that goes in there. A half a lemon. Again, you know, organic if you can. I live here in the Sonoran Desert right now. Like lemons are just everywhere. I don't worry about pulp. I don't worry about a little bit of herb getting into my drink. I don't worry about any of that. Sometimes my family, especially when they don't feel good, they don't particularly care for it. So just know the people that you're helping. So there you go. If this is an organic lemon and you really like a lot of that lemon flavor, because you can see here like all this essential oil that's coming out of the lemon, you can brew that in the tea as well, if that's what you want. And then honey. So it's going to be honey to taste, or a good teaspoon or a tablespoonful. And then I do local raw honey. So buy your honey local. Be respectful of honey. You know, the bees, it takes a lot for the bees to make. So just like anything, be respectful, be kind. And then you stir it. And when you stir it, you slow down. You take some deep breaths. And you infuse it with all that love. And this becomes a really great cup of medicine. Super easy. So drink it warm, hot toddy, especially with these diaphoretic herbs. Serve them warm. So if you're not going to use all of those herbs in our cup, sometimes I wrap a towel around it, or I'll reheat it in a pot, not in your microwave. Of course, if that's all you have is a microwave, then use that. Like I said, my son's in the dorms in the Air Force, and all he has is a microwave. They're not even allowed to have a tea kettle, electric tea kettle. Right? He's in charge of multi-million-dollar aircrafts, but he can't have a tea kettle or a blender in his room. Cheers. Oh my gosh, that's so good. All right? So maybe you try it before you get sick. See how you like it. It's tasty. All right, remedy 1 down. You can feel it working, everything, huh? Okay, so next is steams. This is super simple. So I actually had some allergy stuff going on the last few weeks, and it kind of like settled right in my throat and this upper respiratory place, and it was dry. It was super dry. So steams are fantastic for the upper respiratory system. Now you're getting herbs right into that area, touching tissue. You're getting the herbs or whatever you put it into it right into your lungs, touching tissue. And because this coronavirus is respiratory, lower respiratory prone, that's where it sits, that's the tissue it likes, steams are going to be really super important. So as a preventive, steams are really important to keep this mucosa tissue vibrant, healthy, and moist, right? So it's mucosa tissue is used to capture things and get it out, right? You're trying to like really get this healthy through here. And it's super easy. So basically you just I put usually a cup or 2 of water in here. This is my dinner table. So this is where we usually do this at. And I heat this up nice and hot. I turn it off and I add my herbs of choice. So remember in my kitchen medicine class, you can go back and watch that. We have sage, we have thyme, we have oregano. These are things that are in your pantry already. Rosemary, fantastic for the upper respiratory system, fantastic for getting airflow into the lungs, so for asthmatics or anything that's constricting to the lungs. So is thyme. Thyme is fantastic. I always put thyme in my sicky soup when I make it for my daughter when she's sick. Thyme is always around, or thyme honey, which I'll talk about in a little bit. Yarrow is another one. I don't know like any other herbs. Mint, I don't know that there's too many herbs that I would say, no, don't do that, but maybe there is. But just sticking to maybe some of those basic ones. Any toxic herb, obviously you're not going to do that with. But getting that into the body, right? So I heat up the water, I turn it off, I put per cup at least a quarter cup to a half cup of herb, depending on if it's dry or fresh herb, in there, and cover it up right away. Don't let any of that steam get out. And then you bring yourself, I'm gonna try to do this. This is my wool blanket that I'll be talking about in a little bit, why it's important to have a wool blanket. Ready? Okay, steam tent. Seriously, I know most of you've probably already done it, so I'm just showing you. It is so easy. So you completely engulf yourself in here. Yep, completely. And you take that lid off and you breathe slow and deep over that at a very respectful distance so that you're not burning yourself, and being very mindful about the handle, about pushing this towards you and dropping it on you. Just little disclaimers there. Kids, I did this with my kids a lot when they were growing up. I did something lighter like a towel or a light blanket, so it just was lighter on them. And I just have them sit really still and breathe, even just 30 seconds, but try to do at least 5 minutes or so. Keep tissues handy because you're going to feel it all moving. You want to blow it out. You don't want to keep swallowing it. Ugh, it's like one of my biggest pet peeves. You want to blow it out. You want to get it out of the body. That's super simple right there. So this helps loosen up phlegm. It helps moisten your mucosa tissue, and it gets the medicine directly on the tissue. So this is going to be a really great thing. You can even do it preventive throughout the day, every day right now, just to make sure that everything stays healthy. Super easy, right? You have all of this at home. If you actually don't even have thyme or oregano or rosemary, first off, go out and get thyme, oregano, and rosemary. We're not just a salt and pepper kind of people, right? Go out and get your herbs. Use them, cook with them. Then just use water. But hopefully you have at least some herbs. Yarrow would be fantastic. Here we have, there's an herbalist down in Tucson, John Slattery, and he just posted about using our chaparral, our creosote, Larea, here in the steam and helping for this particular virus. He was linking them to based off of his knowledge of viruses. Obviously, we don't know how herbs and this particular virus is going to interact together because we've never done that. We've never had this virus, so we don't really know. We're just basing it off of the MRSA, SARS, the other kind of viruses that are in this category. Don't go crazy out there and get really stressed out about what's good or not. If it doesn't feel good and it's stressing you out, it's going to do far more damage than trying to find that solution to it. Just keep yourself at home in deep breath, learning from this. You have a good pantry going on. Maybe you just use the lemon peels or garlic in there. I'm sure you at least have those. Don't get too worried about it. It's just this empowerment time. It's time to be really empowered. So that's the steam. So now we got foods, steam, and how to make a hot toddy, right? The next one, this is super simple. We can do this anywhere. It's really allowing yourself to make full deep breaths. So you can kind of start taking breaths in your upper respiratory system. And as you take these breaths, you feel your collarbone rise. Just feel it for a moment. Then once you kind of get comfortable with that, you're going to start pushing the breath down deeper into these back lungs, into these lower lungs. So you can even place your hands down onto the rib cage here, and you just start to breathe down into that space. Allow your hands to fill, to move, and to contract. This might be hard if you have lung issues. This might be hard if you've never done it before. The tissue there, especially in your ribs, might be really tight. So this is the perfect time to loosen all that up. Even if you're asthmatic. So if you're asthmatic, look up the thing called Buteyko. Buteyko, I can't remember how to spell it. It's like B-U-E-T. I'll try to put it in the description. The Buteyko process with breathing. So you breathe a lot through your nose and you learn how to do small breath holds. Like I said, my daughter was asthmatic. That changed everything for her. She was able to pull herself out of asthmatic issues just by how she's breathing. So I encourage you to look that up. Fantastic. Yeah, so anyways, for that Buteyko technique, they talk about more shallow breaths. That's the only thing that I'm kind of like, okay, but when you're acutely having an asthma attack and you need to go through the process of trying to pull yourself out while you're grabbing your medication or whatever, these small breath holds are really beneficial. So right now we're exercising our lungs though. So you bring it down into the farthest part of your lungs and you let it go. And you really start to become aware with these full deep breaths, how your lungs feel. Like really feel them, feel the tissue. So that way, if something does start to happen in your lungs, you can stop and be like, wow, my lungs kind of feel achy, tight, hot, something. Like you can kind of just start to notice how your lungs actually feel. So that's super easy, right? We can do that anywhere. I would recommend doing that every day at least a couple times a day. Maybe it's first thing in the morning and then when you're going to bed at night. It's really going to calm you down. So just remember, super slow, deep, full breaths. Just allow yourself to bring it down into that lower lobes of your lungs. And it changes a lot. It changes your nervous system. It relaxes you, can regulate your heartbeat. It's a great thing to learn. And sometimes if we're already like stressed out, it might take a while to make them long and slow. So just be patient with yourself and get the process done. The next one is to actually wake up those lower lungs. So just tapping on them. So my daughter, again, being asthmatic, there was times where we were just kind of tapping on her lungs, especially during breathing treatments. And you just wake them up. Do this every day too. Allow for this wonderful blood supply to get to this place, all this nourishment to get down. Another one is to find some great stretches. You reach your hands out and you stretch through the ribs. You stretch into that bottom rib cage. You find what feels good. You hold maybe, and then you take deep breaths again and find that lower ribs, that lower lung lobe expand. Super easy, right? You already have that. You already have the ability to do that steam, to do that deep, full breaths. Okay. The next one, I'm going to just save this one for last. Okay, so then we have gargling in the neti pot. Obviously, super simple, keeping tissue healthy. So the neti pot, actually, if you do it every day, even morning and night, it helps you to not catch like these viruses, especially if it's just caught into this healthy mucosa tissue in our nose. Normal or most viruses, I don't know about the coronavirus because it's pretty fast moving, huh? If you neti pot it out, then you have a less chance of it taking full effect in your body, right? So neti potting, if it feels good to you, if that's something, just plain salt water. The same with gargling, just plain warm salt water. Now we can make it more impactful with gargling if we add that sage to it, like I talked about in my kitchen medicine class. So you can add sage, you can add thyme. Sage is perfect for like the throat and the inflammation in the throat. Yarrow, rosemary, like whatever you have, lavender, and the neti pot for creating that well mucosa tissue. So it just brings up a point that I want to mention about essential oils. I'm a big proponent of essential oils. I'm an herbalist, but essential oils, I use whole plant medicine, okay? Essential oils, one, has a huge impact on our environment and plants. It takes a lot of plant to make essential oils. So keep that in mind when you're using them. Two, I never recommend that you take essential oils internally unless you've seen an actual certified aromatherapist, naturopathic doctor that has worked with essential oils in the past and knows how to use them. There are essential oils that will damage tissue in the body. There are essential oils that are very toxic that you do not want to take internally. And there are essential oils that will even harm the kidneys and the liver if you already have underlying issues. So I do not recommend it. There's also a way to take essential oils internally, diluted safely. And I'm not trying to offend anybody out there in any of those that's big into essential oils right now. I'm just making you aware of that. So you can put maybe a drop of lavender essential oils or eucalyptus in your steam if you need to. But I don't really want to push that as much because I need people to kind of step back from this essential oil craze and kind of see what they're doing. One drop of like peppermint essential oil, I haven't done that. I used to do a class on it. I think it's like 26 to 28 would be the equivalent of like 26 to 28 cups of peppermint tea. So when would you ever drink that much peppermint tea in one sitting? So it's self-regulating when you do a whole plant, and it's really easy to overdose when you're using essential oils. So just be mindful. It needs a very soft dilution, even a 1% or less dilution in oil or wherever you're doing it at. So just be mindful. That's just a little extra tidbit there. Okay, the next one I want to talk about is cold infusions. So there are some great herbs that are really high in that mucilaginous kind of constituent that, let's see what would be a good example. If anybody's ever had slippery elm or slippery elm powder, how it gets like super slimy, you know, that is fantastic for healing mucosa tissue. So licorice root, if it fits you, if it suits you, licorice root does have some contraindications, so look that up. Especially if you have heart disease, it can do an imbalance of potassium and salt in the body, pregnancy, especially early pregnancy. So mallow, elm, even wild cherry bark. Jim McDonald has a really great recipe for like an OSHA, wild cherry mallow cough syrup. You can look up on his website, Jim McDonald. I'm pretty sure those are the 3 ingredients. So the mallow and the cherry bark and even mint are very soothing. And when you do them in that cold infusion, it really draws out that mucilaginous effect that it has. And it's very cooling and healing to the tissue. So with this particular virus, it seems to be very drying and very hot, right? Especially at the beginning. So we want to kind of cool you down. And basically, I take out my quart jar again, I add a teaspoon to a tablespoon, depending on what it is. Like mallow, I'll add at least a tablespoon. Wild cherry bark might be, wild cherry bark would be a tablespoon. Like licorice, I might add less per cup, or even more, because you're doing more of the cold infusion. You're not warming it up at all. So, okay, yeah, so we'll just I do like about a tablespoon per cup, a good heaping tablespoon per cup of like mint, mallow. It could be a mixture of any of those. Licorice, again, I would do a little bit less. And you just fill it full of good filtered water, put a cap on, put it in the fridge overnight. It is so divine. Especially here, I live in the desert, and we get so hot and dry here, and it feels so good to do that cold infusion. So that's going to also help keep our mucosa nice and healthy. Another super easy thing to make is a vitamin C syrup. And you can use rosehip, hibiscus, any kind of dried berries, lychee berries, blueberries, cherries, really high in vitamin C, elderberries, you can add those in there. You can even add some spices in there to kind of spice it up, cinnamon, anything like that. Kitchen medicine class, I talk about cinnamon. Cinnamon is also a really fantastic antiviral. And I lump that together. There's a lot of antivirals, but again, we don't know how any of these antivirals are actually going to work with the actual coronavirus. So it's just something to keep in mind that maybe you have them on hand. You know, typically the flu virus, these are really fantastic things to keep on hand. So we can only kind of speculate that some of these things are going to support your body during this process as well. Okidoki, artichoke. Okay, and then a syrup, super easy to make. Again, look up on YouTube, learningherbs.com or Learning Herbs on YouTube is another really great resource, but you'll be able to find how to make syrups pretty easy on your own. Remember that this is a time to empower yourself. So I might be talking about some of these things, and it may be frustrating that I'm telling you to go research them, but that's what this is about. This is about empowering yourself and finding the solutions on your own. So just drop into a place of love and peace and find some wonderful, great solutions. Okay. So I think those are the big things. And now the next one I want to talk about is hydrotherapy. This is so fantastic. My naturopathic doctor, Dr. Valeria Brighton, is one of the most beautiful people that I've ever met. And we've known her since my daughter was less than 2 years old. She was 18 months and started developing these asthmatic issues. And I knew that I could find something better. I took her to the pulmonologist. They said she'll have this problem forever. She just needs to take all this medicine, steroids, all this stuff, which I did put her on for a while to get her out. I'm integrative, like I've said before. I combine both, especially when we're talking about all these diseases and imbalances that can be pretty critical to the body. But Divine just guided me to her, and so we've been friends ever since. And She's classic homeopathy, so I do talk a lot about homeopathy as well. And I can do a separate class on that because a lot of people, some people just aren't really interested in homeopathy, and that's totally fine. I respect that. But it's been a huge part of my life, and I've seen profound healing from homeopathy. But hydrotherapy is using water as therapy, okay? So you can, again, Google and find a lot of different techniques, but one of the most simplest ones that I do once my kids start getting sick, like that first little twinge, you're like, oh, I don't feel good, or you feel like a lymph kind of feels swollen, or maybe you have chronic, like hydrotherapy is really fantastic for chronic illness, for autoimmune disease as well. That's a whole other thing, but it's fantastic. It gets the lymphatic moving, which is our highway for our immune system, and activates it, like just amps up the immune system. It opens up your pores so you're detoxing properly. It is fantastic. So basically, the first one I'm going to talk about is wet sock therapy. So you just get a pair of cotton socks and a pair of wool socks. And you get your feet nice and warm. So maybe you just make a nice little warm foot bath. Sometimes when my kids were really sick and they didn't want to get up, I would just take the heating pad with a warm washcloth and wrap it around their feet and just get their feet really warm. And then you take these cotton socks and you get them wet with cold water and you wring them out really, really good. Super good, not dripping at all. I will wring it out really good, and then I'll put it in a towel and wring it out more to get more out. And then you put these cold, wet socks on their feet, on your feet, and you cover them with your wool socks. Then you get into bed, you get your feet covered up, and you go to sleep. And you'll wake up, and those socks, these wet socks, are dry. So that's what you're waiting for. You're waiting for them to be completely dry or mostly dry. And you'll either see that the kids start sweating, or you start sweating, letting it out, releasing, or you just feel so much better. Like, this has helped my kids so much. Like, I'm holistic, and when they get sick, we really support the immune system. Like, that's part of what I wanted to install in them, was that they needed to take the time to take care of themselves and build natural immunity to things. Of course, when there was much bigger problems, I did take my daughter to the emergency room multiple times because she is asthmatic, and had to get her checked out. Again, I'm not saying you not to go to the doctor. I'm just saying that there's definitely more times than not, we have this power, right? All of this stuff that I'm showing you here today and in my kitchen medicine class to support our body during sickness and really boost that natural immunity. The body takes the path of least resistance. So if you stop letting the immune system do its job, eventually it's not going to recognize that anymore. So like people who always take something to bring down their fever, not like doing bone set or a warm diaphoretic tea where we support the fever, open up the pores and allow you to sweat, but just remove the fever completely, your body has a harder time producing fevers the more that you do that. So this is an incredible part of healing in acute sickness and even chronic illness. So looking up hydrotherapy. I had something else I was going to say about that. Oh, that being said, when a fever gets high, obviously we need to take initiative. Kids can withstand a higher fever. They can do 103, 102. 102 is a good, nice fever for the kids. You just want to make them comfortable. Adults, we can't withstand as high, so we'll get up into that 103, 104, and we're going nutty there, right? So we don't want to get that high. You never throw anybody into a cold bath, and you never try to shock anybody. It's always tepid. So you can even take like just a tepid room temperature cloth, put it on the back of the neck. That sometimes can help bring down the fever, or on the feet can help bring down the fever. You can do a nice tepid bath if they feel like taking a bath with yarrow, drinking yarrow tea, really get the body moving. Okay, so that's one, that's wet sock. I really recommend that you look it up and you get that ready because it is really fantastic. The next one is a little bit more time consuming, but I've had to move to that next level, especially when it comes to lung stuff and throat stuff. I've had to do this next one, hot and cold therapy, still hydrotherapy, multiple times. And it's incredible what starts moving. It's almost like doing that steam and you give the body the moisture it needs. And it's like, okay, now I can get this up. This hot cold packs brings circulation to the area and allows things to move. So I've seen dramatic change and improvement when my kids were having respiratory issues with this. So basically, take a drink. Cheers. You have 2 bowls. Obviously, one's going to be a hot bowl, one's going to be a cold bowl. Now the cold bowl has ice in it, or even an ice pack, so it's cold, right? Again, being mindful if they have a high fever, you just kind of be mindful of how cold that's going to be. And it can be shocking, but my kids withstand it because they knew that it was helpful. So cold enough to where, as cold as you can possibly do it, where your kids can stand it, or you. I don't know, I keep referring to kids because that's what I did. I've done it for myself also, but this is also really great for like sinus infections, doing that hot cold, or even standing in the shower and letting hot water run on you, and then cold water, and then hot. So the biggest thing to always remember is to end with cold, and then wrap yourself up and let your body heat up on its own. That's the biggest thing to remember with hydrotherapy. So one is with cold water and ice cubes. The other one is with hot water, as hot as you can stand. Obviously, do not burn anybody's skin. So you can do like the wrist tests and make sure. And you want to keep this warm because when you start going through this process, this is going to cool off when you start putting the cooler cloth back in there to warm it back up. So just kind of be mindful. And like this, I used to do this with my kids, and it wouldn't really take that long. I would only do like a minute or so each one. Okay, I'll explain it. Let me finish this. So with the hot, you can even make this hot water a tea, a yarrow tea, a mint tea, a tea with thyme. If you have time to do that, you can put something in there that creates more of a compress and allows for more medicine to start to come into the skin, right? Our skin is one of our biggest organs. It does absorb what you put on it. So be mindful about that. What you're putting on your skin gets into your body, even the chemicals. So I wrap this with a towel. So usually it's like underneath, my towel's all folded up nice and neat. And I put it underneath it, and then I wrap it up. So I can keep this as hot as I can possibly can. I keep it covered, and so it stays warm for as long as I can. Because the process takes at minimum like 5 minutes, but sometimes longer if the kids tolerate it or if you can tolerate it. So basically, you have one cloth in one. These are my old spit up diapers and diapers from my kids. You have one cloth in each, right? And you start with hot. You get the body nice and warm. And then you put that cloth back in here, cover this up, and then you move to cold. Now this is a hard transition, especially at first when you're like, and you don't feel good, but just try it. It really does work. So if it's too cold, then you could take some of the ice out. You could put a little bit of the warm water in there. So it's a good wring out. And then wherever the affected area is. So I do a lot on the chest, right? Or the throat or the sinuses, or you can even take them and do 2 of them on the lower lungs if you need to. So this is really great for things that are close to the body. So this is good here, and it's going to bring that wonderful circulation and lymph moving through this area. But I did a lot on the chest, a lot on the throat, and we've done a lot on the sinuses. So you take this. So here comes my wool blanket again. So they're laying on this wonderful wool blanket, and we called it Burrito Baby. So they're laying on it, and it's wrapped around them like this, right? And you take this, hopefully my speaker's not making all this noise, this nice cold cloth, and you wrap up. You're gonna just wrap up as fully as you can to let the body start doing its stuff. So that's about 1 minute, right? Sometimes only 30 seconds, but at least 30 seconds to a minute. You put that in, and then you do the hot again. So you do hot, right, first, get it warm, then cold. You wrap up really tight. Wrap yourself up. Do that for a minute. And you go back and forth for as long as you can, ending with that cold. And when you end with that cold, again, wrapping it up and then taking that wool blanket and just wrap them up completely covering the area. So if it's up here, if it's the head, I do like this kind of turban thing around the head, and you really completely cover it, and you let this warm up. So it won't necessarily dry like the socks do. You just let it warm up. So it's not cold to the touch anymore. Now it's warm. So the body heated it up. And then that's the process. So I usually would go through warm, cold, end there if they were done, or do another round. So I would do at least 3 rounds, at least 2 rounds, at least 2 rounds, hopefully 3 to 4 rounds. Does that make sense? Super easy, but remember to warm up. Always end with the cold. Wrap them up really good. Not warm up, but wrap up. Wrap them up really good, or wrap yourself up really good, burrito baby style. Again, you have all that. You don't have to use this. Use an old t-shirt, use an old towel that you've cut up, right? You have all that on hand. 2 bowls, some warm water, cold water. The last one is a full body. This one's a little trickier if you don't feel good. And I generally do this one for more chronic illness, autoimmune stuff. And again, my fabulous naturopathic doctor, Valeria Brighton, is the one who taught me all of this. So you take your towel or your wool blanket, lay it out on your bed, and you might have to use 2 because you're going to do your whole body. So you want to lay them out so where you can wrap yourself fully up, and then even put your sheets or your blankets over you. Wool, we use wool because it's more insulated. It holds in much better. And then you take a sheet and you run it through the rinse cycle and a spin cycle in your washer. That's the easiest way because you want it to be super wrung out just like the wet socks. So you're basically doing what the wet socks is, but for your whole body. So you're going to get that sheet and you're going to put it through the washer, get it wrung out really good. Make sure it's not dripping at all, really wrung out. Go take a nice warm bath with some sort of your wonderful diaphoretic tea that's going to help you sweat, right? And then you get that sheet out, or somebody does it for you, or you lay it out. Because once you get out of the bath, you want to get right into this. And you lay it on top of the wool blanket. You wrap that sheet around your body, and then you wrap yourself up in that wool blanket nice and tight, and you could put another blanket over that. And you just breathe and relax and allow yourself to sweat, go to sleep, whatever you can. Sometimes I'd use an old sheet because sometimes that sheet can get stained from what's kind of coming out of the body and can really smell really bad. So it just kind of depends on what you're going through. But give that a try. Okay, so I did the steams, food is medicine, hydrotherapy, breathing and tapping, a vitamin C syrup, gargle, neti, cold infusions, and we made this wonderful hot toddy. So I'm going to end it with this. Making medicinal honeys is super easy to do, and I recommend that you have on hand. So when you make this hot toddy, you can use tea. You can use water if you have to, but using tea is going to give it a bigger benefit for you. You can use brandy, you can use whiskey, whatever you need. Brandy, remember, is a bronchodilator. Lemon, and then your honey can also be medicated. So I make a thyme honey. This one is a spruce honey. So this helps with coughs in the chest and removing congestion. So does thyme, right? So I usually make a batch of this, and this is, I usually have at least some batch of medicinal honey at every point of my life, of the seasons. Sage makes a fantastic one, so does ginger. And then this is a lavender lemon balm honey that I made. So basically this one is fresh plant. So basically I filled this jar with my fresh plant, and then I filled it full of honey, my local raw honey. And you can let it either sit in a sunny window and let it infuse, or you can do a very gentle in your pot, bring the water up to, obviously not the top, take the lid off, and let it sit in a warm water bath until it just warms up. Don't warm it up more than 100 degrees because we want to keep this honey nice and full of its enzymes and all of its goodness. So basically I usually bring the water up to temperature and then I put this in and just do a nice water bath with it and stir it. You'll see it'll kind of thin out. If you heat it too much, then once it reaches like 100-ish in that temperature range, the honey becomes much thinner. So you know how sometimes raw honey is super thick? If you need to thin it out, you can warm it up to that, just to that level, so it starts to thin out, and then it'll kind of stay thin even when it cools back down. So then I just infused it. Super easy to do. I don't strain mine because I'm not afraid of eating plants, but you totally can. Straining it is easy. I did this one so I could show for a class. This was thyme honey. I don't usually strain that either. But you do that gentle warming again in a water bath, and then you just pour it through your sieve, your strainer, some sort of fine strainer, and just let it slowly kind of ooze out. And eventually when the plant material's left, you just kind of keep scraping at it, make sure you get all the honey out, and then scrape off the edges, and you have it strained. Totally not necessary though. I did that with this because spruce needles are a little tougher to eat. So I also did that with this. All right, peeps. So that's how you support your respiratory system and your lungs with the stuff that you have in your home. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask me below or email me. Follow me on my social medias. Instagram is Enchanted Herbals. Facebook is Natalia's Enchanted Herbals. Subscribe to this, please, so I know that people are liking what I'm putting out. Share with your friends. This is free medicine here. This is what's really going to help change what's going on in the world. This virus is teaching us something. Let's learn from it. And one of the things is to re-empower yourself and get back to the basics of what is good for you and learn how to really create a healthy, vibrant body and immune system. If you feel like donating to me, I would truly appreciate that. Again, I'll put my PayPal link in the description below. Even if it's just a few bucks, a little goes a long way. I know we're all kind of struggling out there. My job has temporarily stopped until this is over, so I've lost that as well. So I'm putting these out here for everybody, but also if you have any extra change that you want to give, then that would be fantastic also. I am wishing you so much wellness, so much healing, so much learning and growth from this, so much protection. Be good to yourself, be good to others, and sending much wonderful, beautiful, loving, good, healthy vibes. All right, blessings.